Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to GRIDSMART's Webinar Wednesday series. Today we're going to be talking about the fresh release of GRIDSMART 6.8 and taking you through all the new features and software updates that came with that. With me, I've got Wallace Hines, John Isaac, and myself from the software team. We've got Randall Lowry, who's going to be updating you on a bunch of new support resources available to customers. And we're going to walk you through all of that in today's webinar. I want to start this webinar by sort of making a quick announcement about the update. As many of you know, we released it last week. We actually found a minor issue in that related to camera discovery over the weekend. We got that resolved. But if you downloaded the update stick prior to the Super Bowl, please go download it again. Those of you that were directly affected by this, we went ahead and sent an email out to you, so you would already know about this. But if you had downloaded it prior to that and didn't receive an email, go ahead and download it again just to be sure you've got the latest and greatest stuff. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Wallace, who's going to walk you through all the new software features.
Okay, so if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask, go ahead and use the Q&A at the bottom of the screen so that we can make sure that we're following along with what question you guys have, or at the top of the screen. So the major focus for 6.8 was two principal features. We wanted to work on camera discovery, and we wanted to change a few things about how we do outputs and controls. So I'm going to start by talking about what changed with cameras. And as you can see here, these are the changelog notes for all the things that we changed related to cameras. For one thing, we added a new axis encoder so that if you're using the M7011 encoder, you can now use that with the rectilinear IR cameras. We also added a improvement to bright and dark zones without oversaturating the whole image. And we've resolved an issue where this has affected a lot of people, where the axis cameras that were on your network were being discovered by the system and overwhelming it. The major improvement, though, is the improvements to camera discovery and how we display the change for camera discovery. So now camera discovery is a little bit quicker to inform you of changes, and the front panel will be a bit more responsive to changes you see in receiving images versus not receiving images. So I have a video I can show real quick of how the front panel has changed. You'll notice that I've powered it up, and we're waiting to get a green light from status for the engine, so we know that that's running. And the camera is blinking yellow, letting us know that it's waiting to find the cameras. So the LED labeled camera 1, and there go the ports for the cameras. The LED labeled camera 1 now represents the status of all the cameras that are connected to the system. So those two cameras are booting up right now, and there goes the green light, so we have the engine running, and we're still waiting on those cameras to show up in the engine and start giving us images back. But as soon as we start getting the images from those cameras, that camera 1 LED will go green, letting you know that both the cameras are in an operating state. And we're going to cover what camera 2 does, the camera 2 LED does a little bit later. Principally, it's talking about new cameras now, so it's important to no longer think of camera 1 and camera 2 as being separate cameras. They just represent different things. And the new production screen, and there goes the green light, that means both these cameras are receiving. The new production screen will have a change that shows what those mean. Now, I've unplugged the second camera in this system, so even though we're still receiving images from the first camera, since not all cameras are working, we have a blinking red light. I've plugged in a new camera, and so you'll get to see that camera 2 LED go green to represent that a new camera has been attached to the system. So this is what it might look like if you're taking a 2-camera system and replacing a camera. And that should pop up here pretty quick. And we're hoping that these LEDs will be a little bit more transparent about what's going on in the system. We know that what our customers principally care about here is whether or not the camera is sending images to the processor and is actually doing detection. So we're really hoping that these LEDs are going to be, this LED change will help customers understand what's going on with the processor. So there's your green light on camera 2. That means that the new camera has been attached. And I hope you notice that we're only 2.5 minutes in. We've already got the engine up and running. We've already got 2 cameras up and running, and we added a new camera as well. So there, I've unplugged it. This is all a lot swifter than it used to be, and we're hoping it's going to be a little bit more clear. So that's what's changed with the camera LEDs. The new process we have for finding cameras is, we hope, both faster and is going to be easier to understand. So that's the major things that have changed with cameras. The other major thing that we changed was the way we do outputs and controls. So one of the things that was requested was that we be able to do a specific output based on the number of vehicles that are in a zone. So that's what we're calling occupancy-based outputs. So now you can configure your zone to include a particular output that only gets set when 3 or more cars, or 4 or more, up to 6 cars are in the zone. While we were doing that, we also noticed that it was sort of inconvenient to go back to the site settings and change the enabled BIUs, and we didn't like the way that was working, so we changed it now so that enabling a BIU or an SIU and ITS is something that's done from the zone instead of from the site settings. Because if you haven't enabled one of the BIUs or used it in the zones, then you're probably not going to be using it. The other major improvement we've done was, by request, only configured outputs are activated during recall. So what this means is, when you do an update from 6.7 to 6.8, when we are in a when we're not talking to the controller anymore because the engine's offline, or this because we're booting up or something like that, then we're only going to be putting the outputs into recall that are configured for the system. It used to be that all the outputs were activated when we were in that non-operating state. Now it's just the ones that are going to be configured. I also have a video attached to this. Let me pull that up real quick. Because one of the things that changed was the client. It used to be you had to go to site settings and control to change the SIUs or BIUs. That's gone now. That's not where you're going to be doing that. Any SIU or BIU you need is going to be activated from the zone. So what I'm going to do is edit the zone, and you see you've got the BIUs at the top. You can set the output for that. And we add a little yellow bar underneath the BIU if it's got an output attached to it. So another thing that we changed was that you can attach an output for multiple BIUs for the same zone. And here you can see that we have output 6 and output 54 attached to this zone now. So the other thing we added was the occupancy. We've got this little green plus sign down here, and you click that, you can see that we still have the outputs for 1 or more vehicles, which is anytime you see something in the zone, we're gonna do that output. But you can also add for multiple numbers of vehicles. So this will only activate if there are 2 or more, or in this case 4 or more vehicles in the zone. And so what you'll see here when we look at the available outputs, we've got 6, 54, and 17. Now 17 is only going to activate if there are 4 or more vehicles, since that's the way we set up the outputs in the zone configuration. And to remove this, if this is something you don't want, you just disable the outputs for any of the occupancy-based outputs that you've set, and that will remove it from the zone. And when you go back to look at it, you no longer have any occupancy-based outputs to set. You can go back in and add them again, but that's the gist of it. And if you look back at TS1, you'll notice that this all looks the same still. So we didn't want to change the output configuration too much. All we wanted to do was make sure that it looked familiar and that you were able to add the outputs based on the occupancy that you cared about. So if for whatever reason you need to activate an additional output based on the number of vehicles that are in a zone, that's something that's available now. So apart from that, we did a handful of other improvements just because we're always keeping up with these things. One of the improvements was to the speed of reboots. So the process we were using before had a few delays in it that we weren't happy about, so we removed those delays. We were running into an issue with the engine where if the time changed and if you have NTP set, it's probably changing on a regular basis. If it updated by 10 seconds or more, it would shut down the engine. We fixed that. That's not going to happen anymore. We also resolved a bug where pedestrian zone states weren't being logged to the zone state files appropriately. So if you're using those data files, the pedestrian zones are now being well represented in that. As for some client changes, we fixed an issue where the site might appear to flash on and off in terms of connectivity. We were requesting something a little too frequently, and if it wasn't returning, it was acting like the site wasn't connected. But that's been removed now, so it should appear nice and steady. We also resolved a bug where if the postal code wasn't added to the site settings, it could prevent you from being able to open the info dialog in the site settings. So that's been fixed as well. We resolved an issue where the client would get hung in the loading screen. This might still happen sometimes, but if you just close and reopen the client, it should resolve itself. This was due to the way we were setting the window size when we opened it. So you might lose your window size settings if you have to close it when it gets hung and loading, but in general, that shouldn't have to happen. We also removed the ability of the client to automatically discover sites that were connected over the network. What we were using to do our camera discovery before was also part of the way we were discovering sites with the client, and we decided that third-party software was not something we wanted to be associated with. So we've removed it, and so we're no longer discovering the sites on the network automatically. However, the local port, we do pull for that, so you're still going to be seeing sites show up automatically in the local port. You won't have to enter an IP address for those, just the ones that you're going to be connecting to on the network. Apart from that, we also removed the web-based user guide. It's now just a PDF, something that you can print out, and it'll be with the client. We're doing this as part of a move to our new support portal, and Randall's going to be talking about that.
All right, give me just a second to get to the website. Everybody should know our regular website. If you go to the gridsmart.com, you can click on the support link. And that will take you to our new support portal. And this is the home, I guess, of all of our support activities. We are tracking all of your calls and all of your tickets through this portal. And what you will see here, first thing when you get here, you'll notice that there's the menu bar at the top. There's the solutions, forums, and downloads. So when you're looking for the new software, you can click on the downloads, and that will take you to get the software. And you can also do, if you're looking for a specific solution to an issue that you're seeing, you can search for that here. An example would be, let's do cameras. So I'm looking for something to do with the camera, and it adds all the suggestions that you have, or that we have in there, as well as tickets that you may have submitted to us, either through calling us or email or through the portal. And those will come up there as well, whether they're open or closed, so you can reference everything that you've ever done with the system. There are several forums that we'll go to. And the forums we have, so this is where we will post all of the change logs. So you'll notice there's one here for 6.8 that we just did. Any of the known issues will be there, as well as the service bulletins and our tech tips. There's also a section for feature requests, so that if you are, if there's something that you'd like to see in the software or hardware wise, you can post that there, and we will get that to the people that need it. And it also will, the system will also suggest topics based on what you've looked at in the past. So one of the things that you can do with the support portal is, instead of points of contact for support, you can still call us, you can still email us at support@gridsmart.com. Those have all stayed the same, but you can also, once you log in, it's going to use your cloud account. So if you've logged into cloud, it should save your credentials, and you shouldn't see a login screen. So as you can see, we're on Christie's system here. And what you'll have is the option to submit a new ticket. You can check the status of your tickets. So if you've called us, emailed us, or contacted us through the portal, your tickets will be there, and you can just click on those, and you can see that we have a ticket here that we created specifically for today. It says, and we'll also use this as an example in another feature in just a minute. So you can click on there, and you can see all of the, you can see how long it's been open, you can see who's working on it, and if it's something that you have already fixed, or a suggestion that we've done and we've left the ticket open, and the issue is resolved, you can actually go ahead and close your ticket, and it will notify us and let us know that it's fixed. You can also add people and copy people into the ticket if you wanted to do that. And you can update the information. Anything you see with a red star is information that will be required for the ticket that we want. If you're working on an issue, like this one is an example for finding the 6.8 software, there's no intersection or serial number, so you can just enter in none, and it'll get through those filters. And then you can add to the information on the ticket by just clicking in here. And it will add that information to your ticket, and it will tell you that it's working on it. It will also send us a notification that you've added a note. So that's one aspect. The second aspect that is new to the support portal is this little window here. It'll always be in the right-hand corner, and it will ask you if you need help. If you need help and you don't want to call or don't want to submit a ticket and you want something, if your question, just click on that, and it's a live chat feature. You'll just enter in your name. It should default to your account information, and then hit connect. And what it'll do is this connects to myself or Randy, and we will get a notification that a person is asked for a live chat, and then we can ask, we'll ask you what we can do for you, and then you would type in software. So we have our question and we send that to Randy. He should be online and responding. This is live, so. And this also, and if you, let's say that you ask the question and you want to move on, you can actually minimize that and it will say that he's responded or he's looking at it. So you can see that he's there. Oop. And what he's doing is it's a programmed shorthand that we have that gives you the link. And so what he's done is he's provided us the link to the knowledge base article or the changelog list, and that gives us all of our changes that Wallace just went through. Okay, and then the next thing I wanted to go through is you guys might notice that you're going to get an email reminder. So if you have a ticket that is waiting for information, so anytime that we email you and ask for information, 15 days after that, the ticket is going to be in a status of waiting on customer. And so anytime that it's after 15 days, it's going to send an email reminder basically saying that we need more information on your ticket. If you don't respond to that, you'll get another email at 30 days and the ticket will be closed, but it can be reopened by replying to the email or going into your web portal. You can reopen them, or you can call us and just tell us that you're having this issue again or the same issue. I believe that's everything that we have on the support portal, and we can go to questions.
Hey everyone, this is Andrew jumping back on here real quick. I noticed we had quite a few join in after a few minutes after the webinar started. If you didn't hear my initial announcement, just wanted to repeat it. Whenever we released 6.8 last week, we actually discovered a minor issue that created major problems at an intersection where cameras could not be discovered after a reboot. We got that resolved and republished a new 6.8 update stick. So if you downloaded it prior to the Super Bowl, please go back out and download a new copy of the update stick. Those of you that were directly affected, we went ahead and sent out an email notification. But if you had already downloaded it and hadn't applied it, just make sure you go and get the latest copy of that so you don't run into any camera discovery issues. We want all of the features that Wallace discussed today to work 100% of the time. So go grab that update and apply away. Go ahead and open it up for any questions now. We already had one through the chat feature, but if you've got any, please submit them and we'd be happy to answer them. Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead and Christy just asked if I wanted to go ahead and cover the question that was asked. We had one from Andrew Constantine. He asked, does faster camera discovery also equate to faster learning? Yes and no. Learning is a different algorithm and depends on other factors like number of vehicles and time of day, the light in the air, all that stuff. But finding the cameras faster will get learning going faster, and thus the total startup process is going to be much shorter because of that. Correct, Brad. It's the update stick. The client is also in the update stick, so you sort of get both by downloading it, but just to be safe, it's not going to hurt you to go ahead and update the client again. Oh, come on, guys. I know you got some more questions. And well, yeah, if you don't have any other questions at this time, Randall just covered how to ask as many questions as you want through our chat feature. So you can always reach out to us and we'll get those answered. This webinar will also be on Vimeo, and a link will be made available through our support site as well. So you can always come back and rewatch it and make sure that you're up to speed. I see a question from Brian here. Will the old client work with older firmware? It depends on if you're referring to older as in 6.7 or prior, or if you're talking about the first 6.8 client. But in general, yes, older software will work with older firmware on the processor. So 6.7 talking to 6.7 and earlier will work, but 6.7 talking to 6.8 will not. We try to be backwards compatible, but not forward compatible. So 6.7 doesn't know about some of the new 6.8 features, and for that reason, we limit the communication between them. But 6.8 will always be able to talk to the older versions, and so 6.7, 6.6, 6.2, 5.4, you're going to be able to communicate with all those that are already deployed out in your field. All right, it doesn't look like we have any more questions in the queue, so I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up this 6.8 webinar. Thanks again to everybody who joined us. Oh, got a cute few that threw in there. Come on, where were these questions a minute ago, guys? All right, so we're going to work through these real quick. I haven't updated anything since the initial install. Are there steps to install? We've got a great, step guide on how to update the processors in our support knowledge base here. But all you need to do is take the update stick that you download from cloud, unzip it to an empty thumb drive, and insert it into one of the USB ports on the processor, and it'll recognize the update automatically and apply it. Just allow it to go through that process and reboot, and your system will be up to the latest version. And Randall just showed off how great the support search features are behind the scenes there. Are there any differences in the update for Gen 1 or Gen 2 processors? The answer to that is no, the process is the same. The features we support are mostly the same. The only one that you're not going to get with the older Gen 1 processor is the initial recall state and output recall states for configured outputs only. We did not change the firmware for the LP or the Gen 1 processor. That's a GS2 feature only. And I believe that's going to be the only one that would affect. I'm waiting on the sudden burst of more questions here. I suspect we're going to get a few more when we least expect them. That's right.
So Eric was asking in the chat.
Oh, got one in the chat here. All right, we got a question here from Eric. You notice the 6.8 supports ITS and BIU connections with an ATC cabinet. We do have several customers that are already using ATC cabinets. So the answer to that would be yes. The expectation is that it would work as you'd expect. And then, wouldn't it be in recall when it boots though? Whenever I've seen it reboot, I'll get an entire intersection detector failure. So no, what we'll do on those is we're only gonna place recall and detector failures on configured outputs. With the GS2, if you've already configured it, what we'll do is only output those or only place calls or detector failures on those outputs that you've configured in the intersection. If it's a factory default system, we won't place any outputs or detector failures to the cabinet. So if you're doing the initial configuration, you're not gonna have to worry about that. If it's already configured, it's only gonna be the ones you expect. And just to clarify the initial recall definition, that means whenever the system's booting up and we're not tracking vehicles yet, that's the initial recall state. So since we're not actually detecting live vehicles in the intersection yet, because we're going through the learning process, we're not going to be placing outputs based on vehicles. So we're going to go into recall and keep the intersection running in recall until we're live and tracking vehicles.
So essentially that means anytime that status light is blinking yellow.
When you recommission, will all phases be on recall? No, because when you recommission, you're applying those outputs to that configuration or to that processor. So those states will, the learning process, if it was already, well, it wasn't already configured, it's gonna, John, I believe you can correct me if I'm wrong there, but when we configure those, we'll place recall on the ones that are configured.
That's correct.
None of the other outputs. And once we're out of learning, we'll go ahead and start tracking based on those phases. Got the question, running 6.0, can I go straight to 6.8? Yes. You can jump right up from 6.0 to 6.8. For those that don't know, the only ones that require any sort of intermediate upgrade is for systems running 3.1 or earlier. So you have to have some systems out there that are really old to need to go to an intermediate update. If you're running 5.4, 5.1, 5.0, 4.0, you can update straight to 6.8. All right, and with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap this webinar up. Again, feel free to reach out to us at support@gridsmart.com or through our new support portal, support.gridsmart.com. If you have any questions, we'll live chat with Randy or Randall. And if they have any difficult questions that they can't answer right away, they'll reach out to us in engineering and get those answered for you. Thanks again for joining us on Webinar Wednesday, talking about 6.8 and all the great new features that are released with that. We hope you go out and apply it to all of your systems and update them all in the field. Thanks again, everyone. Have a good rest of the day.